The Great Hall of the Galactic Coalition was filled with voices. Representatives from 12 different species sat in their assigned places, arguing and shouting over each other. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Captain Tejo stood near the back of the human section, watching the chaos unfold. He was a tall man with gray streaks in his black hair and calm eyes that had seen too many things. Beside him, Lieutenant Yuna shifted impatiently. She was younger, with sharp features and sharper instincts. Her fingers tapped against her leg in frustration. 3 worlds, the Varric commander was saying, his deep voice cutting through the noise. He was a massive creature, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with thick blue skin and 4 arms. 3 of our colony worlds burned to ash. The Dren show no mercy. They take no prisoners. And what does this coalition do? Talk. The Varric had always been proud. They called themselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy. For centuries, they had looked down on other species, especially humans. To them, humans were soft, weak, unworthy of respect. "We must combine our fleets," said Delegate Sumi, the human representative. She was a small woman with silver hair and a gentle voice, but she spoke with quiet confidence. "Together, we can push back the Dren invasion." The Varric commander laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Your fleets. The humans have what, 50 ships? Old ships. Slow ships. Your contribution means nothing." Yuna's jaw tightened. Tejo placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent reminder to stay calm. "Every ship matters," Sumi replied smoothly. "Every life matters. That is what the coalition stands for." "Pretty words," the Varric sneered. "But words will not stop the Dren." The meeting continued for hours. In the end, nothing was decided. The species argued about territory, about resources, about who should lead. Meanwhile, somewhere in the darkness of space, the Dren Collective was getting closer. Later that night, Tejo walked through the corridors of his ship. The Earth defense vessel, Silent Dawn. It was a medium-sized vessel, nothing special to look at. The hull was plain gray. The weapon systems were adequate. At least, that was what the official records said. He found Yuna in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "You wanted to say something back there," he said, joining her by the window. "I wanted to do more than say something," she admitted. "The way they talk about us, like we are children, like we are nothing." Tejo was quiet for a moment. "Does it matter what they think?" "Yes," Yuna said firmly, "because one day they will need our help. Real help. And they will not even think to ask because they believe we have nothing to offer. Perhaps that is for the best." Una turned to look at him. Sir Tejo's expression was unreadable. "Some things are better left sleeping, Lieutenant. Some weapons should never be used." Before she could ask what he meant, his communicator beeped. It was a priority message from Earth, from Admiral Wan himself. Tejo excused himself and walked to his private quarters to take the call. Admiral Wan appeared on the screen. He was an old man now, past 80, but his eyes were still sharp. He had been a soldier his entire life. He remembered things that most humans had chosen to forget. "Captain," the Admiral said, "you have seen the situation." "I have, sir." "It is worse than the reports suggested. Will get worse still. Our intelligence indicates the Dren have not yet committed their full force. What we have seen is only the beginning." Tejo felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. How many ships? Thousands. Perhaps tens of thousands. More than the coalition can possibly fight. Silence stretched between them. Sir Tejo said carefully, "If the situation becomes that desperate, will the Council authorize?" "No." The Admiral's voice was firm. "Protocol Ember remains sealed. Our orders are clear. Observe. Protect civilians where possible, but do not reveal our true capabilities. Not unless there is absolutely no other choice, if that choice comes." Admiral Wan's old face seemed to age another 10 years. "Then God help us all, because once we show the galaxy what we really are, there is no going back. We made a promise, Captain. 200 years ago, after the Third Global War nearly destroyed our entire species, we made a promise. We swore we would never again be conquerors. Never again be destroyers. We buried our weapons. We hid our true power. And we chose peace. I know the history, sir. Then you know why we must hold back. Why we must always hold back. The other species think we are weak. Let them think it. Better to be underestimated than to become the monsters we once were. The call ended. Tejo sat alone in his quarters for a long time, thinking about the past and fearing the future. The next morning, the Silent Dawn was assigned to a joint patrol mission with ships from 3 other species. It was symbolic, nothing more. The Varric commander had made sure to mention that the humans were only included as a courtesy. As the ship left the station, Una ran a standard systems check. Everything was normal. But as she moved through the data, she noticed something strange. There were sections of the ship's computer she could not access. Locked files. Sealed compartments that did not appear on any official blueprint. She brought it to Tejo's attention. Forget about it, he told her. Sir, there are entire decks I cannot account for. Power systems that are drawing energy, but serving no listed function. What is hidden on this ship? Tejo looked at her for a long moment. The day you find out, Lieutenant, will be the worst day of your life. Trust me on this. Some doors should stay closed. At the edge of Coalition space, long-range sensors detected a disturbance. A fleet was approaching. A massive fleet. The Dren had arrived, and they had brought everything in the Coalition command center. Panic began to spread as the true scale of the invasion became clear. 50 ships had been predicted. 500 had been feared. 5,000 Dren warships emerged from darkness, their weapons already charging, and humanity watched in silence, bound by a promise made 2 centuries ago, wondering how much longer they could keep their fire contained. The Varric fleet burned. Tejo watched the battle reports come in, each one worse than the last. The proud warriors who had mocked humanity just days ago were being slaughtered, their great warships, painted in the colors of ancient victories, broke apart under the endless assault of Dren weapons. 800 Varric ships had engaged the enemy. After 6 hours, fewer than 200 remained. They are retreating, Una reported, her voice flat. There was no satisfaction in it. Whatever she thought of the Varric, watching them die brought her no joy. On the observation deck of Argent Station, refugees from a dozen worlds pressed against the windows, watching distant explosions bloom like flowers in the void. Children cried. Parents held them close. Nobody knew what would happen next. The Coalition was falling apart. The Nolari delegation has withdrawn to their home systems. Delegate Sumi informed them during an emergency briefing. The Ferrics are demanding we surrender. The Varric are too broken to fight. We are alone. Not alone, Tejo said quietly. Earth still stands. A Varric officer who had survived the battle laughed bitterly. He was wounded, his blue skin marked with burns, one of his forearms hanging useless at his side. Earth, your 50 ships. What will you do, human? Die slightly slower than the rest of us. Tejo did not respond. He simply looked at the officer with eyes that held something the Varric could not understand. Something old. Something patient. Later in the engineering section of the Silent Dawn, Una found Engineer G1 running diagnostics on systems that should not exist. G1 was a quiet man, older than most of the crew, with hands that had built and repaired more machines than he could count. He looked up when Una entered, and something in his expression made her stop. You found the locked sections, he said. It was not a question. What are they, G1? What is the ship really carrying? He was silent for a long moment. Then he gestured for her to come closer. On his private screen, he showed her power readings that made no sense. Energy outputs that should have been impossible for a ship this size. Weapon signatures that matched nothing in the Coalition database. Every human ship carries them, he said softly. Sleeping systems. Hidden technology. Weapons and engines that we developed in secret over 200 years. Una stared at the numbers. This is enough firepower to destroy a fleet. More than enough. Then why? Why do we hide? Why do we let them mock us? look down on us while we carry this. Giwan looked at her with sad eyes. Because we remember what we did with power like this. Long ago, before we reached the stars, we turned these weapons on ourselves. We nearly ended our own species. Billions died. The Earth itself was scarred. When it was over, the survivors made a choice. They sealed the weapons away. They swore an oath. Never again would humanity use this power for conquest. Only for protection. Only as a last resort. And this is not a last resort? The captain does not think so. Not yet. In another part of the station, an ancient being walked among the refugees. Elder Marath of the Nolari was over 3,000 years old. His species lived for millennia, watching the rise and fall of civilizations. They rarely spoke, preferring to observe. But today, he stopped beside a group of young aliens and began to tell a story. Long ago, he said, his voice like wind through dry leaves, there was a species that discovered fire before they discovered wisdom. They built weapons that could crack planets. They fought wars that poisoned their own world. At their darkest moment, they stood at the edge of complete destruction. The young ones listened, not knowing who he was talking about. But they did not fall, Morath continued. Instead, they looked into the darkness and chose to step back. They buried their weapons. They wore masks of peace. And they waited, hoping they would never need to remove those masks again. What species? A young Varric child asked. Morath smiled, ancient and knowing. One day, you will see. The next morning, everything changed. A Drent strike force broke through the Coalition's defensive lines. 30 warships, moving fast, heading straight for the civilian refugee convoy that was trying to escape to safer space. The convoy had no weapons, no shields, just transports full of families trying to survive, and between them and the Dren stood only one ship, the Silent Dawn. Teho received the reports in his command chair. 30 enemy ships, thousands of weapons. Against his single vessel and its hidden power that he had sworn not to use, Captain Yuna said, her voice tight, there are 40,000 civilians on those transports. If we do not stop the Dren, they will all die. I know. We cannot fight 30 ships. Not with our official weapons? I know. Then what do we do? Teho was silent. On the screen before him, the Dren ships grew closer. Their weapons began to charge. In minutes, they would be in range. In minutes, the killing would begin. He opened a channel to Earth. Admiral Wan's face appeared. Older and more tired than ever. You see the situation? Teho said. I see it. Hey, there's no other choice. If we do nothing, 40,000 innocents die. Children die. And the Dren will not stop there. Admiral Wan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. We swore an oath, Captain. 200 years of peace. 200 years of hiding what we are. I know. But some oaths must bend when innocents are at stake. The longest silence of Teho's life followed. Then, finally, the Admiral spoke. Do what you must. Protect them. Protocol Ember is authorized. The channel closed. Teho turned to his crew. They were all watching him, waiting. Some of them knew what was about to happen. Most did not. All hands, he said, his voice steady, despite the weight of history pressing down on him. Prepare for combat operations. Authorization code Ember 77. Unseal all restricted systems. Throughout the ship, lights that had been dark for decades flickered to life. Panels slid open to reveal controls that had never been touched. Power began to flow through pathways that existed on no official blueprint. Yuna watched her tactical display transform. Weapon systems she had never seen appeared. Shield generators of impossible strength came online. The ship itself seemed to wake from a long sleep. My God, she whispered. The Silent Dawn turned toward the Dren fleet. And for the first time in 200 years, humanity prepared to show the galaxy what they truly were. The mask was about to fall. The Silent Dawn changed. Yuna watched in disbelief as the ship transformed around her. The plain gray hull split apart to reveal darker metal beneath, metal that seemed to drink in the starlight. Hidden weapon ports opened along the entire length of the vessel, dozens of them, each housing weapons that glowed with terrible energy. The ship's engines, which had always been adequate and nothing more, roared to life with new power. The entire vessel seemed to grow, to stretch, as systems that had been compressed and hidden for centuries finally deployed. "What is this?" someone on the bridge whispered. "This is what we really are," Tejo said quietly. The transformation took less than a minute. When it was complete, the Silent Dawn no longer looked like a simple patrol vessel. It looked like what it had always been beneath the disguise: a predator. A weapon of war unlike anything the galaxy had seen in living memory. The Dren fleet had noticed. Their 30 warships slowed their approach, sensors scanning the human vessel that had suddenly become something else entirely. For a long moment, neither side moved. Then the Dren opened fire. Hundreds of energy beams and missiles streaked toward the Silent Dawn. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The refugee convoy behind them had seconds to live. Una braced for impact. The impact never came. The ship's shields, now operating at their true capacity, absorbed the entire barrage without flickering. The attacks that should have torn them apart simply vanished against a barrier of energy so powerful it made the air itself hum. "Return fire," Tejo ordered. The Silent Dawn spoke. That was the only word for it. The weapons that had slept for 200 years finally woke, and their voice was thunder. Beams of light brighter than stars cut through the void. The first Dren warship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist, erased from reality in a flash of energy that left nothing behind but scattered atoms. The second ship followed, then the third, then the fourth. Una worked her console with shaking hands, barely able to process what she was seeing. The tactical data made no sense. The weapons they were firing operated on principles she had never studied. The power output was beyond anything in Coalition records. "How is this possible?" she breathed. Engineer G1's voice came over the internal channel, calm, despite everything. "Humanity spent 200 years advancing in secret. While the galaxy thought we were building cargo ships and passenger transports, we were preparing, just in case." The Dren tried to flee. They were the collective, the conquerors of 100 worlds, and they tried to run from a single human ship. They did not make it. In 4 minutes and 12 seconds, 30 Dren warships were destroyed. The Silent Dawn did not take a single point of damage. The refugee convoy behind them, 40,000 lives that had been seconds from death, survived without a scratch. Silence fell over the battlefield. Then the communications channels exploded across the Coalition. Word spread faster than light. Ships that had witnessed the battle transmitted recordings. Survivors on the convoy told anyone who would listen. Within hours, every species in the galaxy knew what had happened. The humans had been hiding. The quiet, unremarkable, mocked humans had been pretending to be weak. And now, the truth was out. On Argent Station. The Varric officer who had laughed at humanity stared at a screen showing the battle footage. His wounded arm forgotten, his pride shattered. He watched a single human ship do what 800 Varric vessels could not. "Impossible," he said. "This is impossible." Elder Morath stood beside him, ancient eyes twinkling. "Not impossible, inevitable. I told you the story of a species that buried their weapons. Did you not believe me? You knew? You knew all along. The Nolari have watched humanity for 500 years. We saw their wars. We saw their suffering. We saw them nearly destroy themselves. And we saw them make a choice that no other species has ever made. They had the power to rule the galaxy, and they chose to hide it instead." On Earth, Admiral Wan addressed the United Planetary Council. His face was grave, but his voice was steady. "The secret is out," he told them. 2 centuries of restraint have come to an end. We revealed our true capabilities to save 40,000 lives. I do not regret this decision, but we must now decide what comes next. What are our options? The council president asked. We can attempt to return to hiding. Claim the Silent Dawn was a prototype, a single exception. The galaxy might believe it. He paused. Or we can authorize a full awakening. Show them everything. Use our true power to end the Dren threat once and for all. Become conquerors, someone said bitterly. Become the monsters our ancestors warned us about, no. Juan's voice was firm. We can show our strength without becoming tyrants. We can protect without dominating. Our ancestors feared their own power because they used it for destruction. But power itself is not evil. It is what we choose to do with it. The debate lasted 3 hours. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Across human space, the awakening began. Cargo stations shed their false holes, revealing fortress structures bristling with weapons. Transport ships transformed into carriers and battle cruisers. Orbital platforms that had been called research facilities. Deployed weapon systems capable of cracking planets. And the ships. Thousands of ships that had been hidden in plain sight, disguised as merchant vessels and passenger liners, now revealed their true forms. The Varric had mocked humanity for having 50 ships. The truth was closer to 5,000. Each one more advanced than anything else in the galaxy. Each one carrying weapons that made coalition. Technology looked like children's toys. Fleet Admiral Biora took command of the awakened fleet. She was a woman in her 60s, silver-haired and iron-willed, who had trained her entire life for a war she hoped would never come. All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Bora, she broadcast. For 200 years, we have worn masks. We have pretended to be less than we are. We have watched other species suffer and held ourselves back because we feared our own strength. That time is over. Across the void, 5,000 human ships listened. But hear me well. We do not go to war for conquest. We do not fight for glory or territory or revenge. We fight to protect. We fight to save lives. And when this war is over, we will not become rulers. We will become guardians. That is the promise our ancestors made, and that is the promise we will keep. The fleet moved. Engines that bent space itself carried humanity's true armada toward the front lines, the Dren Collective, which had terrorized the galaxy for generations, was about to learn why humanity had been so careful to hide, and across 1,000 worlds, beings of every species watched their screens and wondered the same thing. If this was what humans could do with one ship, what would happen when their entire fleet arrived? They would not have to wonder for long. The human fleet arrived like dawn, breaking over a dark horizon. 5,000 ships emerged from jump points across the war zone, their engines blazing with power that made nearby sensors overload. Coalition vessels that had been preparing to retreat stopped and stared. Varric survivors, limping home in damaged warships, watched in stunned silence as humanity's true armada revealed itself. Fleet Admiral Biora stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Earth carrier Eternal Promise. Around her, officers worked with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no excitement, only the calm focus of people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. The Dren main fleet is holding position near the Crimson Threshold, her tactical officer reported. Approximately 4,000 ships. They have seen us coming, Gudabora said. Open a channel. All frequencies. Her face appeared on screens across the galaxy. Human and alien alike watched as this silver-haired woman spoke words that would change history. To the Dren Collective. This is Fleet Admiral Biora of the Earth Defense Force. You have invaded our allies' space. You have destroyed civilian worlds. You have murdered millions. This ends now, she paused, letting her words sink in. I offer you one chance. Withdraw from all occupied territories. Release all prisoners. Return to your home systems and never threaten this region again. If you comply, we will not pursue you. If you refuse, behind her, the human fleet spread across the void like stars themselves. Weapons charging with light that could be seen from planets light years away. If you refuse, you will learn why humanity chose to hide its strength for 2 centuries, and you will not enjoy the lesson. The response came quickly. The Dren Overmind, the collective intelligence that commanded the entire species, spoke through 1,000 voices at once. We are the Dren. We do not retreat. We do not surrender. You are one species. We have conquered hundreds. Your threats mean nothing. Biora nodded, as if she had expected this answer. Very well. All ships engage at will. Priority targets are weapon systems and engines. Disable rather than destroy where possible. Protect escape pods. The order surprised many who were listening. The Dren had shown no mercy. They had slaughtered civilians. And humanity was telling its ships to be gentle? Captain Tejo understood. On the bridge of the Silent Dawn, now part of the main fleet, he explained it to Lieutenant Yuna. We're not fighting to destroy the Dren. We are fighting to stop them. There is a difference. They killed millions, Yuna said. They deserve worse. But we are not defined by what others deserve. We are defined by what we choose to do. Our ancestors nearly destroyed themselves because they forgot that lesson. We will not forget it again. The Battle of the Crimson Threshold began. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration. Dren weapons fire washed over human shields and did nothing. Human weapons tore through Dren armor like paper. Ships that the Collective had believed invincible were disabled in seconds. Their engines dead, their weapons silent. But humanity did not go for kills. Again and again, human ships targeted specific systems, leaving Dren vessels crippled but intact. When Dren escape pods launched, human ships protected them from the crossfire. The Overmind did not understand. In all its centuries of existence, it had never seen war fought this way. Corporal Desu was part of a Marine boarding team that captured a damaged Dren command ship. He was young, barely 25, and this was his first real combat. He expected to find monsters. He expected to fight for his life. Instead, he found wounded Dren soldiers trying to reach their escape pods. His training said to secure them as prisoners. His fear said to shoot first. But something else, something deeper, made him lower his weapon. Medical team. He called into his communicator. We have wounded. Dren wounded. They need help. The sergeant stared at him. They're the enemy. They're living beings. And we're better than this. An hour later, those same Dren soldiers were being treated in a human medical bay. They would survive. They would go home. And they would tell others what they had seen. Humans who could have killed them, choosing to save them instead. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Dren fleet was broken. Over 3,000 of their ships drifted dead in space, disabled but not destroyed. The Overmind, for the first time in its existence, felt something it had never experienced before. Fear. True fear. Not of death. The Dren had always accepted death as part of conquest. This was different. This was fear of something they could not understand. An enemy that had the power to annihilate them completely, but chose not to. An enemy that saved Dren lives while defeating Dren ships. It made no sense. And things that made no sense were terrifying. Across the galaxy, other species watched the battle recordings with similar confusion. The Varric. Commander who had mocked humanity sat in silence, watching human ships protect Dren escape pods. I do not understand, he said finally. They could destroy them all. End the threat forever. Why show mercy? Elder Morith answered, because that is the difference between strength and cruelty. Any species can destroy. It takes true power to choose not to. The humans learned this lesson the hard way, through fire and blood and the near extinction of their kind. They will not forget it. On Earth, Admiral Wan watched the battle reports come in. Tears rolled down his weathered cheeks, but he was smiling. They did it, he whispered. They fought with everything we have, and they still kept their souls. Our ancestors would be proud. Fleet Admiral Biora broadcast again as the last Dren ships fell silent.
Ow.
To the Dren Collective, your fleet is defeated. Your invasion has failed, but your species still lives. We have killed as few of your people as possible. We have saved those we could. This is not because we are weak. It is because we are strong enough to choose mercy. She leaned forward, her eyes hard. This is your final chance. Surrender now. Accept peace. Or the next battle will not be so gentle. The Overmind was silent for a long time. Across the Collective, Billions of Dren minds processed what had happened. They had been the conquerors, the unstoppable force, and they had been humbled by a species that refused to play by the rules of war they understood. Finally, the response came. A single word transmitted across all frequencies. ... Why? Biora smiled, but there was no joy in it. Because 200 years ago, our species nearly destroyed itself. We looked into the abyss of extinction and saw our own reflection. We saw what we had become: monsters, killers, conquerors, and we made a choice. We buried our weapons. We hid our strength. We swore that if we ever used that power again, it would be to protect, not to destroy. She spread her hands. You asked why we show mercy? Because mercy is not weakness. It is the greatest strength of all. It is the choice to be better than our worst instincts. And it is a choice we make every single day. The silence stretched across light years. Then slowly, Dren ships began to power down their remaining weapons. One by one, they signaled surrender. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. 6 months passed since the Battle of the Crimson Threshold. The galaxy had changed. Everything had changed, but not in the way most species had expected. When the war ended, many believed humanity would take control. They had the power. They had the ships. They had proven beyond all doubt that they could crush any opposition. The natural order of things said that the strong ruled and the weak obeyed. But humanity did something no one anticipated. They refused to rule. Delegate Sumi stood before the new coalition council, her silver hair gleaming under the lights of the great chamber. Representatives from all 12 species listened as she spoke. Humanity did not reveal its strength to become masters of the galaxy. She said, her gentle voice carrying to every corner of the room. We revealed it to protect the galaxy. There is a difference. We will stand as guardians, not governors. We will defend, not dominate. And we will work alongside you, not above you. The Varick representative rose. He was a younger commander now, the old one having retired in shame after the war. How can we trust this? You hid your power for 200 years. You lied to us all. How do we know you will not change your minds? Sumi nodded. You are right to ask. Trust cannot be demanded. It must be earned. And we understand that we have much to prove. But I will tell you this. We hid because we were afraid. Not of you, but of ourselves. We feared what we might become if we let our power loose without wisdom. We watched our ancestors nearly destroy Earth with the same weapons we now carry. We swore we would never repeat their mistakes. And if you do, another representative asked, if humanity becomes the tyrant you fear, then stop us. Sumi said simply. Watch us. Question us. Hold us accountable. We are not asking for blind faith. We are asking for a chance to prove that strength and goodness can exist together. The council debated for weeks. In the end, they agreed to a new structure. Humanity would lead the coalition's defense forces. But decisions about war and peace would be made by all species together. It was not perfect, but it was a beginning. The Dren Collective was not destroyed. This surprised everyone most of all. Admiral Wan personally oversaw the disarmament process. Dren weapons were dismantled. Their war fleets were reduced to defense vessels only. But the Dren people themselves were allowed to live, to rebuild, to find a new path. You could end us, the Overmind said during one of their meetings. Its voice had changed since the war. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something almost like curiosity. Your weapons could sterilize our worlds. Why do you allow us to continue? Huan looked at the strange being before him. Because ending you would not bring back the millions you killed. It would only add more death to the galaxy. And because... He paused, gathering his thoughts. Because we believe species can change? We changed. We were once as cruel as you, perhaps worse. And we found another way. We do not understand this mercy, I know. That is why we will teach you. Not through conquest, but through example. In time, perhaps your kind will understand what we learned through so much suffering. on Argent Station. Elder Marath finally revealed the full truth. The ancient Nolari stood before a gathering of beings from every species, including many Dren who had been allowed to attend. His 3,000 years showed in every line of his face, but his voice was strong. 500 of your years ago, my people began watching a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. The species there was young and violent and brilliant. They invented wonders and horrors in equal measure. They built cities that touched the clouds and weapons that could split atoms. He paused, letting the weight of history settle over his audience. Then came their third global war. For 3 years, they tore their world apart. Weapons that should never have existed were used without mercy. When it ended, half their population was dead. Their planet was scarred with wounds that would take centuries to heal. We believed they were finished, that they would fade into extinction like so many promising species before them. But they did not fade, someone said. No, they did something remarkable. The survivors gathered in the ruins of their greatest city and made a choice. They looked at what they had done, at the monsters they had become, and they rejected that path. They buried their weapons. They sealed their most terrible technologies, and they swore an oath. Never again would humanity wage war for conquest. Only for protection. Only when there was no other choice. Morith's ancient eyes swept the room. For 200 years, they kept that oath. They ventured into the stars wearing masks of weakness. They endured mockery and disrespect from species who did not know the truth. They could have crushed any enemy, ruled any territory, taken anything they wanted. Instead, they chose peace. They chose restraint. They chose to be better than their ancestors. In the silence that followed, a young Varic warrior spoke. Why? Why endure the shame? Why let us believe you are weak? Because being thought weak is a small price for not becoming a monster? Morith replied. The humans understood something that most species never learn. True strength is not in the ability to destroy. It is in the wisdom to choose when not to. Captain Tejo retired after the war. He returned to Earth, to a small house by the ocean, where he could watch the sun rise over waters that were finally clean after centuries of healing. Admiral Mon visited him there. 1 year after the Dren surrender. The old admiral was tired now, ready for his own retirement. Do you have regrets? Juan asked, as they sat together watching the waves. Tahoe thought about the question for a long time. I regret that we had to reveal ourselves. I regret that the mask had to fall. But I do not regret saving those civilians. I do not regret showing the galaxy that strength and mercy can exist together. The young ones are different now, Juan said. Lieutenant Yuna, she is a captain herself. She trains her crew in our old traditions. She teaches them why we hide our strength, why we always choose protection over conquest. The lesson must not be forgotten. In the years that followed, the story spread to every corner of the galaxy. Parents told their children about the species that could have ruled the stars, but chose to protect them instead. Teachers used humanity as an example in lessons about power and responsibility. Even the Dren, slowly learning to be something other than conquerors, spoke of the strange mercy that had spared their kind. Lieutenant Yuna, now Captain Yuna of her own vessel, stood before a new generation of human officers. The galaxy knows our secret now, she told them. They know we could destroy them all. They know our ships are stronger, our weapons more powerful, our technology more advanced. But that is not what they remember most about us. What they remember is that we chose not to. What they remember is that when we had the power to rule, we served instead. What they remember is that we kept our promise. She looked at the young faces before her. One day, you may face the same choice our ancestors faced. You may have your finger on a weapon that could end a war in moments. And in that moment, I want you to remember, we are not defined by what we can destroy. We are defined by what we choose to protect. On 1,000 worlds, the story was told for generations. The quiet species, the hidden strength, the promise kept. And every time someone asked why humanity had hidden their power for so long, the answer was always the same. Because the truest measure of strength is not what you can do. It is what you choose not to do in the end. Humanity was remembered not as conquerors or rulers or tyrants. They were remembered as guardians, protectors, a species that looked into the abyss of their own darkness and chose to climb toward the light instead. They were called humans, and they kept their promise.